In this episode, we're covering a new topic that we've never focused on before, and that's dads with ADHD kids. You're going to want to stick around because this episode was made just for you. This program is made possible by financial support from Smile Online Course and Books. Smile Online offers online courses for teens and young adults designed to help them master social and career skills. Subject matter includes customer service skills, job interviewing, electronic etiquette, and managing stress. For more information, visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.
Welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge, a movement to awaken and inspire fathers everywhere to take great pride in their role and to challenge society to understand how important fathers are to the stability and culture of their family's environment. Now, here's your host, Jonathan Guerrero.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me in this episode called Dads with ADHD Kids. My guest is Jared Kallen. Jared is the founder of Action Pact Coaching with a mission and purpose of helping ADHD and ADD youth thrive. Jared, welcome to the Fatherhood Challenge.
Thanks very much, and thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Here's my favorite question of all.
Yes,
what
sir.
is your favorite dad joke?
Kid asks his dad or her dad, "Why don't skeletons fight each other?" And he responds, "They just don't have the guts."
Yeah, this is awesome. This is fun.
Yeah.
All right, let's get serious. Jared,
Yeah, let's get serious.
What is your story behind why and how you founded Action Pact Coaching?
I always wanted to help people. And so I did that a more normal route by teaching high school, middle school for about 5 years, about 35 years ago, after getting a graduate degree in education. And then I wanted to go out on my own. And I always assumed that I would be tutoring or coaching kids that involving subjects like English or history or writing, because that's what I taught. But instead, the market created this opportunity because all the referrals that were coming into me were from therapists, and they were all neurodivergent kids or young people, like kids with ADHD, ADD, high functioning autism, etc. So then, because that happened, I was like, oh, well, I need to learn as much as I can about this stuff called ADHD, etc., so that I can coach as effectively as possible and help as many people as possible. And that's sort of how it developed.
Let's go to the basics. What is ADHD, and how do you know if your child has it?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's spot on. Basically, ADHD stands for Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder. It's a neurodevelopmental condition that affects how a person regulates their attention, their impulses, and their activity levels. A lot of people don't know this, but it's one of the most common mental health conditions in children. It's in the DSM-3, and it often continues into adulthood. And then to answer your question about how do you know, the quick breakdown are the sort of the core symptoms are, one is inattention. So kids and others have difficulty sustaining focus. They're easily distracted. The ADHD and other neurodivergents only work at things that they're interested in, and they will avoid literally all the rest. They would tend, I'm generalizing here, but they tend to forget things a lot, lose things, whether it's a backpack, socks, money, assignments. They have trouble following instructions, and they rush through things. They'll rush through like an essay prompt for The Great Gatsby or for The Catcher in the Rye. They do not fully grasp what they're supposed to produce for the teacher because they're rushing and because they either have trouble following instructions or they sort of refuse to follow instructions. And then they struggle with organization and completing tasks. So they might stop halfway through a particular task with the plan to complete it later that day, and then they won't do it. They'll either forget or they have issues with time. The second core symptom with some neurodivergence is hyperactivity. So restlessness, fidgeting, difficulty sitting still, feeling, quote, on the go or driven by some sort of motor, talking excessively. The third core symptom is impulsivity, interrupting or blurting out answers, trouble in waiting for turns to talk, making quick decisions without thinking through the consequences of those same decisions, which is a big one. And I would just say that not everyone has all these things. There's subtypes. So there's primarily inattentive, which is sometimes called ADD, primarily hyperactive impulsive. But the most common is a combination of all these things.
If you suspect that your child might have any or maybe all of these symptoms, is this something that you just assume the diagnosis, or is there a process to achieve a diagnosis?
There is a formal process, which is that the parents would normally hire a neuropsych evaluator, and then they run their kid through a battery of tests, all sorts of things that look for intellectual ability, and also where there could be pockets or gaps in functioning, actually brain functioning. So we're talking about things like low processing speed, coming straight from the brain due to the ADHD or the ADD, or low working memory, things that are actual things that are holding the kid back. So anyway, the neuropsych evaluator, takes 2 or 3 days to space out the testing so that you don't overwhelm the kid. The parents have to pay the neuropsych evaluator, a wad of money, and then she produces literally a 50 or 60-page report that goes out to anybody who might, be involved in helping their kid, including me, but other people at schools, people at colleges, universities. And at the end of that neuropsych report, there are always a list of basically guidelines as to how everyone should sort of proceed based on the data. And this also helps the kid moving forward. So, for example, if a kid is heading to college the next year, then the neuropsych evaluation will allow for things that will help the kid, like the kid will get time and a half before every exam. That's one example. Or the kid will never have to take more than one exam per day in college based off the neuropsych evaluation. And so what that prevents, of course, is overload on the kid, where maybe normally 2 or 3 professors would assign a big test or exam all on one day. That would not be allowed as long as the neuropsych evaluation was adhered to by any college, university, or high school or middle school. The neuropsych evaluators are so skilled at pointing out other things. So, for example, a kid who's prone to distraction during class time would be assigned a front row seat every time at every class. So that decreases the probability of self-distraction or distracting other kids, and also increases the probability of learning whatever the class objective is for that day, because they are at the front and they're staring right at the teacher or professor and they're staring right back at them.
Now, I've been to your website, looked at your background, looked at what you do, and what I noticed, what stood out to me, is that you have spent an incredible amount of time in the classroom educating yourself. You spend a lot of time with parents, with educators, helping them and teaching them how to work with ADHD kids. But this comes with this background where you've sat in so many of these classes that some of these kids are or will be sitting in, are likely to sit in if they continue their education. How has this contributed in your experience to understand what these kids are facing?
You're correct. I have had a lot of schooling and certifications. I just got recently certified to coach parents using the DISC profile, which is a personality sort of thing. Because generally in families, there's a lot of discord and stress and conflict, because the ADHD kid can often be dominant, what we call dominant. That's the D part of the DISC. And the parent is usually not. And so they're sort of at loggerheads, but then there's answers provided by using the DISC profile. But to address your question more directly, from what I've learned, and really more so experience from all these coaching assignments with all these different types of kids and young people, is that is sort of their tendencies, how they normally will react or think, or what they'll respond to well and not well. So, for example, most kids who have these neurodivergent distinction, or diagnosis, I should say, they might be very prone to saying no before they even understand what's going on, instead of saying yes. And so my job partly would be to increase the number of yeses and decrease the number of nos, if that makes sense. For example, if I said, I want to help you to be able to plan better, which is a huge part of executive function, which everyone needs, whether you're ADHD or ADD or totally typical, we all need to learn how to plan better and have a sort of a toolkit for that. But in addressing your question, I know that often a kid will first come on the first session and say, I don't know how to plan, or I don't want to plan, or I don't need to plan better. And since I know that's coming often, I'm prepared with my response, which is because kids like this they need to know the why they are learning anything, or having to adopt a new method or a new attack strategy or whatever. And so I'll be ready with the why. I'll say something like, "Well, if you learn how to plan better and prioritize things better and record things instead of keeping it all in your brain, which is pretty stressful, and not foolproof for sure, then you will do better in school, and at least you won't get lost." And also, you'll have more time for fun. So I'll try to position it so that they see how it will benefit them, instead of it's just another baloney task that they have to learn from somebody, and, why do it? The we is everything when you're coaching neurodivergence. You always use, or at least I always use the word we. Like, we're going to do this. We're going to get better at this. We're going to get better at planning. We're going to get better at self-advocating with teachers or professors. We're going to learn how to record stuff so you don't forget stuff. We're going to learn how to set alarms so you don't forget stuff. All that kind of stuff. But it's always we. And more critically, what the we shows is that the kid or the youth is in a no judgment zone, free of judgment. And this is particularly important for neurodivergents because a lot of them, not all, but a lot of them are used to being called stupid or dumb or idiotic or worse things, right? And so when I come on with a we approach, it's usually welcome. Like, "Oh, this is cool. I'm on a team with Jared. He's listening. He's responding. He doesn't put it all on me. He explains things or re-explains things. He models how to do things before he expects me to do them." So the we is, to me, is everything.
There's a lot of ignorance out there, myself included in that, by the way. What are the top 3 stereotypes of kids with ADHD?
I would say that the top sort of 3 common stereotypes about kids with the ADHD, ADD, et cetera, is, that, and they're oversimplified, and so they can be misleading. The number one is they're always hyper and bouncing off the walls. Well, the reality is that many kids with ADHD or ADD are inattentive and daydreamy, but they're not hyperactive. So ADHD, for example, can show up as a quiet distraction just as much as visible energy. To say, "Oh yeah, I know about that." They can't sit still ever, and they can't be, you can't control them, and they're sort of out. It's incorrect, and that's number one stereotype. Number 2 stereotype is they're just lazy and or unmotivated. The reality is that ADHD and ADD it's all about executive function challenges, not laziness. So these, just to put this in clear perspective, these kids often want to do well, but struggle with organization, time management, starting tasks, which is called task initiation, and avoiding procrastination. But it's not that they want to do poorly; they want to do well. They just don't know how, and that's where I come in. So when we're talking about executive functioning, just to be clear, we're talking about coaching kids on how to plan better, how to prioritize better, how to prioritize better, how to schedule better, how to self-advocate with teachers better, the how to, and that's all executive functioning. And it's not their fault, to the point of this second common stereotype. They were born that way. Their brains are that way for now. And that's why the toolkit that I have to provide often can help. The third common misconception or stereotype is they will, quote, grow out of it. The reality is that ADHD symptoms often do persist into adulthood, even if they change in how they show up. Adults, for example, may seem less hyperactive, but may still struggle with focus, memory, and planning, and things of that nature. So, for example, I was recently coaching a 38-year-old architect, and he had some of the same issues that we've been addressing. So with that kind of client profile, you just stress, what are we going to do? What, can you set the alarm and don't turn off the alarm? Some people do that for some reason. But what systems can we put in place to sort of shape your day so that you're showing up when you're telling people you're showing up and you're doing things, accordingly. Another thing that happens with the same adult person was that they had time blindness, which is another problem with this client profile. And so time, a task that should normally take literally 30 minutes may end up, this client will end up spending 4 hours on it. And so that brings up another thing, which is that these profiles often, the neurodivergence often hyper focus is what it's called. So they'll delve right into a topic of interest to them, and they will lose all track of time. And that's why they call it time blindness. The only problem with that is that there might be 5 other things they had to do before the next day, or 5 other tasks that they had to do at their job that won't get done because they fell into hyperfocus and experienced time blindness.
A lot of the frustrations from these challenges is that explain maybe 75-90% of the behavior reactions that we see.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when things don't get done that they're quote supposed to have been done, then you can imagine that creates a whole ball of stress and frustration within that person and within the family context. So, if if a kid was, if a 12th grader was supposed to get up by himself, to get to school on time, and he didn't set an alarm or the 3 alarms he has, or the alarms went off and he shut them off right away and got right back into bed, went back to sleep, that causes him to be dysregulated, is what we say. And it also causes mom or dad, who's supposed to be driving him to school, to be angry because now that's throwing off their entire day. They're going to get to work late. If the kid has siblings, which they often do, they're going to get to school late, all because of this sort of breakdown in executive functioning, just regarding a 12th grader trying to get up by him or herself in the morning. Then you hear about their frustrations or the fight they had right after, or mom calling me and saying, this has to stop. Can you help? Things like that.
Are educators really equipped or properly trained to be able to work with ADHD kids?
Depends, because some schools are specialized in dealing with this kind of student and client. For example, at some schools that are excellent, all the schools, all the teachers are actually learning specialists and specialists in executive functioning and ADHD. And so some parents really succeed in finding those schools and placing their kids there. And then they get a whole lot of support, right? It's built into the entire system. There's not, the teachers are trained to look for things, to provide the toolkits, to monitor the kids, et cetera. Then on the other side of the coin, which is more common, a normal teacher doesn't know a whole lot or enough about ADHD, or they sort of know and are aware of the problems it causes, but they're not on the lookout for them. And that's where the kids fall through the cracks. And then there's a lot of pain as a result of that, not addressing, not creating systems so that the kid remembers to do things, records assignments, submits homework. Instead, there's a lot of forgetting. There's a lot of sort of dropping the ball, and the teachers are not equipped, or maybe they are equipped, but the teachers have too great of a course load and too many students just in sheer numbers to be able to address, let's say one-offs with kids who are severely or even mildly ADHD or ADD. And they just can't get to the kid fast enough, if that makes sense. It's a resource issue.
Okay, so let's say there's a dad listening right now that is at their wits' end because their kids are in a school where the teachers are uneducated of what to do with ADHD students, and their kids are struggling. Where does a dad like this start?
I would say, in my experience, a couple things. One is the dads are not usually directly involved with their kids with this topic. It's usually the moms who are involved. That's just a fact. The moms are the ones who almost always call me. I almost never get a call from a dad about what I can do for their kid in terms of the executive functioning coaching and other things, mentoring, modeling, et cetera.
Very true.
And so that happens, and so that's sort of a little bit part of the problem. But to address your question head on, I would say that the dad, before doing anything concretely, has to possibly consider changing his own mindset about ADHD and about his kid. A lot of the dads that I've encountered over the years will still cling to the mindset that the kid's lazy. He doesn't need coaching. He doesn't need anything. He needs to just do his work and get it done and stop making excuses and stop blaming others. And he just, and that's the problem. We don't need you. We don't need anyone. That is factually incorrect when we're talking about the neurodivergent type. And so the first thing I would say, just based on sheer experience, is dad has to consider becoming more understanding, becoming more accepting, becoming more open-minded, being less quick to criticize or come down on their kid. It's really a mindset shift, more into acceptance and tolerance and patience rather than coming down hard on their kid, which isn't fair to the kid if they're neurodivergent, right? They were born that way. They didn't choose to be this way. And two, it certainly doesn't help with dad's relationship with the kid, because all the kid hears is you're messed up, you're impaired, you're lazy, and that's all negative. It's negative energy.
I'm getting into the weeds here a little bit on this topic, but I'm going into the generational component. So I'm a Gen Xer. In my generation in school, a lot of these symptoms of ADHD that we've discussed, I looked at my own peers, how my own peers and how people like me were treated. If we exhibited these symptoms in school, we were simply sent to the office.
Right.
We got in trouble, and then we were often in trouble at home. We are comfortable with parenting the way we were parented. That's all we know.
Right.
So we go back to these habits of ignorance. Back then, no one really understood ADHD the way we understand it now. It's important to be aware that there's a difference now between what we know now about it and then what we knew then, how we were treated, and how we should be treating our kids in response to what we know. And I think that awareness is so important.
Yeah. You're spot on, and I have to tell you that you're absolutely correct, because the generational differences are huge. And so, for example, when we're talking about Gen Z, which is mostly what we're talking about, it's been a complete shift. And so with Gen Zs, you have to literally ask for permission before you do many different things, whether it's telling them the truth about a situation or expressing your opinion about a situation. You have to literally say something like, "May I tell you what's on my mind right now?" Then you have to pause or wait. And then after they say yes, which they usually do, because now you're respecting how they function and how they think and how they want to be treated, then you're able to open up the floodgates and tell them what's on your mind, which whatever's on your mind that you're expressing is designed to help them. But to your point, you have to say, is it okay if I do X or Y? May I address this? May I talk about why no work was done this week with you? And then you have to wait for them to acknowledge that you're respecting them and asking for permission. And then they do grant you permission, and then progress can be made, in my experience.
What we've talked about on this program is just barely scratching the surface. You have a toolkit that is going to be a lot more helpful to dads. And then you have resources. Your website is just packed with stuff. You add so much value to the education experience. What is available to dads through what you do?
The most important thing, I think, with dads, based on what we just covered and discussed, is that we can use the DISC profile, which is a personality profile that can be measured very easily. I administer the test for free. It takes about 10 minutes to fill out. And then you get like a 50-page report on dad. And then I do the same thing with the kid, the neurodivergent kid. And then you get another 50-page report. And now you have a data-driven, well thought out approach as to how to advise dad as to what to do or what not to do based on the personality differences between him and his kid. I'll just take one example. Many ADHD kids are considered dominant, and so they want control of situations and they want challenges. And what they do not want is lack of flexibility. They do not want to be ordered around. They do not want to be told what to do without any reasons or explanations, etc. And so if a dad understands this, then of course now he has the opportunity based on the DISC profiles to change the way he says things or to pick the right time to say something based on his kid's profile versus his own personality profile. So this is sort of a game changer in how we approach the intra-family relationships, the stresses and the conflicts. Is like if a dad says, he doesn't listen to me ever, what's the point? Then we go, well, here's the reason why. He's dominant. Maybe you're dominant, so you're clashing. To reduce the clash, you have to do all the things I just noted. And after you do them and you pick and choose how and when you say things, you then have to give your dominant ADHD kid, for example, time to process whatever you just said. You have to sort of take a step back and take a deep breath and then let it circulate in your kid's brain. And then we often see quite a bit of progress, both within the relationship and also in school in terms of academic output. Dads can Google just Action Pact, P-A-C-T as an agreement, coaching, Action Pact Coaching. I'll come right up with my website, my LinkedIn, and other social, Instagram, etc. And they can read, more importantly, actually, they can read, there's over 150 testimonials at the bottom of my LinkedIn and on my website. They can click on a bunch and they will see their kid without a doubt, 100% in some of those testimonials.
Just to make things easier, if you also go to thefatherhoodchallenge.com, that's thefatherhoodchallenge.com. If you go to this episode and you're looking for the episode titled Dads with ADHD Kids, Dads with ADHD Kids, go to that episode title, look right below the episode description, and I will have the links that Jared mentioned posted right there for your convenience. Jared, as we close, what is your challenge to dads listening now that are just struggling?
Put simply, is to get a little more involved, get a little more educated. I can't imagine he would be unhappy. He'd be like, thanks very much. I'm going to try this.
Jared, this has been an important conversation, and I'm so glad I have you on for this time to be able to help educate me and other dads listening. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing. It's making a huge difference in families. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your time. And I appreciate all that you're doing with these podcasts, which are, I'm sure, are very valuable to many people who just, give it a listen.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fatherhood Challenge. If you would like to contact us, listen to other episodes, find any resource mentioned in this program, or find out more information about the Fatherhood Challenge, please visit thefatherhoodchallenge.com. That's thefatherhoodchallenge.com.